Hey everybody, welcome to another episode of the PC Perspective Mailbag. I apologize to everyone that had to go through dealing with 1,141 seconds of Josh Walrath last week. That's more seconds than I could probably deal with. And, we saddled you with it. So I hope everybody enjoyed that last week. Obviously, we were at CES. Josh was not, so he's able to cover for me. So in all seriousness, thanks for covering for us, Josh. Let's get right into the questions. Kyle Bachman wants to know, what is a core and what does it do? I feel like I've answered this question before. A core is basically a term used for processors of all kinds. You'll see them referred to primary CPU processors. You'll hear some people refer to cores when they talk about graphics as well, like ARM Mali GPU is often discussed about in terms of how many cores there are. It's basically just a group of logic and processing blocks that interact in a way that they're segmented together, right? So when typically think of like an Intel core of one of its Intel Core line of processors, which is more confusing than it should be. A core is simply a block that can compute on one or more threads, has its own dedicated cache, has its own dedicated instructions, those types of things. Like a core on an 8700K is capable of processing on 2 threads because it has hyper-threading. And I don't think we can really be more specific in that because there are so many other ways that you could do it. If you remember back to AMD Bulldozer, it had a core. It had that they advertised it as 2 cores, but it actually had a shared segment as well, which actually led to a lawsuit that's been settled. But it's all about, it's kind of a non-standard definition by any processing company, any chip designer, for how they want to segment up their part, whether it be for CPU, GPU, DSP, anything of that like. So what it does is all of the math and processing to get you to the end result. It's responsible for bringing memory in, processing that data, and then outputting it back to memory to be used for other applications or other processes to use. So quick, short, to the point. What else can you ask for? JMC wants to know, now that CES is over, are there any signs of 4K FreeSync 2 monitors? No. I saw literally zero FreeSync 2 stuff at AMD. They didn't talk about it at their tech day. And we really didn't even see any G-Sync HDR things either. They promised that they'll be available next month. So there's that at least. I still don't know anything specific about FreeSync 2 displays. I should clarify the G-Sync HDR displays are not 4K. They're 25 by 14, I believe. I think. Maybe they're not. Maybe they are 4K. Maybe they have both. But nothing from the FreeSync side. We did see the BFGD, the big format gaming display, which is a 65-inch 4K G-Sync TV/monitor, however we want to word it, that will be out in late summer, right? A totally different type of product, right? And I think a lot of it will change probably between now and that July timeframe. We have some questions in from Twitter as well. At Technic15 asks, will Sandy Bridge CPUs, the 2500, 2600, those types of parts, get the microcode update in reference to Spectre and Meltdown and all that goodness? I don't know the answer for that. It seems unlikely, especially if you're on a DIY system that is a retail motherboard from Asus, MSI, Gigabyte, ASRock, any of those types of guys, that they would suddenly offer up BIOS updates for those products. I don't think it's impossible, and I think it would actually be really nice for them to do that because of the severity of the security vulnerability that exists here. However, Intel put out a blog post today that they talked about 90% of the processors released in the last 5 years have been patched. So not even their own metrics that they're talking about publicly go beyond that. So it puts you in a state of mind for how they may be thinking about where their targets are for this. There's a lot more risk for enterprise and data center systems because of this than there is necessarily for consumers, especially if you look at like Spectre variant 1, which is the one that can be attacked through simple JavaScript on a web page that you get access that way, has already been patched by Microsoft in Windows 10, and that doesn't require any microcode updates. The Spectre vulnerability variant 2 is aided by microcode updates. I don't think it's fully a requirement, but it's aided by it. And those are the ones that you would need a new BIOS update of some kind to really utilize. But I don't think they're going to go that far back, and which is, there's a lot of people on 2600s, 3770s that I think will be, I don't know, upset by it. But hey, if you have a significant other and you need to upgrade a machine, now you can just say it's a security concern, not that you need to play your games better. So maybe use that as your opportunity. That's how I'd look at it. Question from Might-Ishin. I don't know. How long has Shrout Research existed, and why hasn't it been mentioned on the PCPer channel? So Shrout Research is another company that I started a little over a year ago, maybe the previous October, that is kind of a consulting company. We work with a whole bunch of clients out there, from a lot of the guys that you do know and some guys that you don't. I don't know if we've mentioned it on any videos that we do specifically, but it's definitely it's been mentioned and discussed on the podcast that we do and on PCPer.com. There's actually some stories that show up on PCPer.com that I list specifically as previously published on shroutresearch.com or whatever. So nothing's being hidden or anything like that. It's just two very different entities from how we interact with everybody. So I don't think it's ever come up in maybe a specific video, but if you watch the podcast, which I know sometimes we drone on, it can be boring for an hour and a half to 2 hours every week, but we talked about it in there. So I think there's another question in today's episode about it. Jiba Jabba wants to know, can you elaborate? No, here it is. Can you elaborate more on the day-to-day of Shrout Research? I always assumed it was the bread and butter of your office, more so than the website or the YouTube channel. Well, that's not the case, actually, because that consulting company is so brand new. This office and the office we were in before that all existed before the idea of Shrout Research even came forward. The day-to-day of Shrout Research is the same. It's very similar to what we do here. We're testing a lot of stuff. We're generating reports and generating data, but in those cases, we're kind of sending it back for internal discussion as opposed to publishing it on PC Perspective for public consumption. Yeah, the YouTube channel and the website are still the bread and butter of all of that. The most work goes into it. We have the most people involved in it. Website more so than the YouTube channel, but that's definitely where the bulk rests. At Carehawked, sorry. What the hell is going on with GPU prices? Is it more than just miners? No, it's not. It's pretty much just miners. It is pretty much the mining craze, right? But there's two kind of distinct segments of that I think are worth pointing out. One is you have the guys who are buying, 2, 4, 5, 10, 15 graphics cards, and they're running it in their office, their basement, or what have you. And I call those the smaller miners. They're eating up a decent amount of product, but they're not the biggest problem. More than likely. The biggest problem is when you hear stories of GPU vendors sending an entire 737 full, shipping plane full of cards from Taiwan direct to China for these enormous warehouse-sized mining facilities. And I've heard more than one instance of that type of thing occurring. And then I'm sure on other scales you get pallets and pallets of graphics cards going straight from Sapphire or straight from Pallet or whoever is actually manufacturing these cards for everybody, going straight to these people. It's just so much easier if you're the manufacturer to ship 10,000 cards to one guy as opposed to 1,000 cards to 10 guys. All right, less paperwork. You'd be willing to cut a little bit of the price there and the margin in order to make up for the lack of shipping costs, or the lower shipping costs, or the lower just kind of administrative parts of that. So sending 500 cards to Newegg and 500 cards to Amazon is more complicated than sending all of them over to the guy who really wants to buy them anyway. So you're kind of just cutting out the middleman in that regard. But in terms of GPU pricing in general, yes, I still think that's still the biggest cause of scarcity, which is what is causing the prices to go up. I'll be curious, right? So the Bitcoin crash that has occurred recently, that's in a slight recovery, where it went from, it was a peak about 19,000 and it was in the 9,000 ranges just yesterday. If that will have any impact. Obviously, you aren't mining Bitcoin on GPUs, but everything that you do mine tracks based on Bitcoin, right? Bitcoin is kind of the overseer, the godfather of cryptocurrencies, if you will. And as it goes, usually, almost inevitably, all the other ones go, and they kind of can swing even further down than they went. So if Bitcoin, drops from 19,000 and stays at 11,000 for a couple of weeks, maybe you start to see some of those people either selling cards back in or not as interested in buying up every GTX 1060, 1070, RX 64, Vega 64 that shows up in stock because they know they'll be able to resell it later or use it for their own purposes. Then maybe that will open up some inventory for actual gamers. But I don't really have a timeline for that. Something to keep in mind that we've seen going around online recently is check for, if you're building a whole new system and you've been waiting for a GPU, you might look at Dell or HP gaming systems that offer things that they might have a GTX 1080 in it, and they might be selling a system for $1,600 or $1,700 that's pretty close. That would normally be a $100, $150 markup over what the MSRP of systems are, of all the components are. But now, because they have bought those a long time ago, they've had pre-arranged agreements for all these pieces, it may actually be a better deal than going out and building your own system, which is kind of sad and disappointing to think about. At Daniel Stakic wants to know, with GPUs more than double MSRP, why not push these miners to buy Titan Vs, since they all buy GPUs at huge prices anyway? That way we can have some cards available for gaming. The truth is that the miners are just smart people, right? They're not just buying the highest performance cards, they're buying the highest efficiency cards in terms of efficiency per watt, and then also efficiency per dollar. Like, what is their lowest return on investment? That's why the initial kind of craze of this, when it restarted, say in April, May, or June of last year, was really centered around the Radeon 480, 580 cards, not because they were the fastest cards. The 1080 was out and it would go faster than those, but it was less expensive, it was more power efficient, and so as a result, it was just the most efficient card to make money based on the product you could buy. So that's why nobody's going to buy a Titan V for gaming for mining, because it has a $3,000 MSRP. Your return on investment on that is going to be a longer term. Now, if this shit just keeps on going, you may see that be the only card left, and then eventually some people will be stupid enough to buy those too for that purpose. But I don't think there's any way for us or NVIDIA to redirect people who are buying stuff for mining to the Titan V, because if the Titan V was that good of an option, gamers would be buying it as well. So not a solution for you there. The Uncanny Experience wants to know, if you hadn't become a tech person, what other profession might you have chosen? That's a very broad thing. If I hadn't become a tech person, because that tells me that I don't know if you're keeping me out of would I have been an IT person at a company. I actually did that for a summer between my high school and freshman year and sophomore year of college. I came back home and I worked for the company my mom worked for and ran, helped work in the IT department. And by work in the IT department, I mean sat at a desk, created some access databases for them to use internally while writing for amdmb.com the majority of the time. I was a bad employee. I don't know what else I would have done. I almost went into the Air Force. I was going to be a pilot until they told me they wouldn't accept LASIK surgery for pilots, so I decided to not pursue that option. Apparently when I was little, I told my mom I wanted to be a spider, like not Spider-Man, but a spider. So I don't know if that option's still available. I don't know. I think I still would have ended up something technology-wise, right? Because I played games. I was on a computer all the time, building PCs. So even if I hadn't been a tech reviewer, I would have been something in IT or technology or management or something like that. Maybe I would have founded a multi-billion-dollar GPU technology company. I don't know. I could have been a different person completely. Instead, you're stuck with me. Becker asks, how much does your audience size differ between the PCPer website and the YouTube channel? It seems like you've added more scheduled YouTube content recently. Are you planning to do even more? The audience size, honestly, on PC Perspective is still dramatically larger than the YouTube channel. We have, 140, 150,000 subscribers on YouTube, which is a good amount. But we don't see the growth that we would like to see there. The website is still significantly larger in terms of page views, in terms of unique visitors, in terms of revenue, in terms of content, all those areas. We exceed that on the website than we do on the YouTube channel, which is still kind of expected, right? Like, I still believe there's a lot of good content on YouTube for technology enthusiasts, PC enthusiasts. I still believe that the written element is still preferred by the majority of the highly technical audience. Not that they don't also consume video content, but I just think that is the preferred method. And I think you can do more with that media in writing and your ability to edit and do things. Things take longer than they do on video, I would say, because of the amount of information you're usually trying to present, whereas when we're doing a YouTube video, the longer you make the video, the less retention you get and that type of thing. Anyway, I'm going down a different rabbit hole. We have added more scheduled YouTube content. We were doing some PCPer plays. We haven't done that in a while because we've been really busy. But also, honestly, the content didn't draw in as many people as we had expected or hoped. This mailbag is continuing to go. It seems to be fairly popular, like getting the other guys involved. It's fairly easy to come up with and produce comparatively, so we'll definitely still be doing this, but we'll be adding more into the YouTube channel as we go. But I still think the focus is going to be on PCPer.com when we use YouTube and our video side as a supplement for that. We have a lot of motherboard guys, case guys. When we come out and we do our interviews here at the studio, they love to see that type of stuff, but it doesn't make the money that the main website will make. Austin Strand wants to know, would it be possible to get an anime-style fight scene in the background of a PCPer Mailbag video? That would give me a reason to keep the video window in the foreground. Probably not today, but I'll work on it. If you have any specific requests on who should be in the fight, we only really have 3 other people in this location, Alan, Ken, Jim, and Alex, so we can have 4 other people involved. And maybe we could convince Josh or Jeremy to do some fighting moves in front of a green screen, and then Jim, when he edits this video, could put it together in the background. Seems unlikely, but I'm sure now something will appear over my shoulder here or here, indicative of the future that you have wrought upon everybody. At Scott Baker Temp wants to know, can any of the Optane SSDs be used as an OS or storage drive in any system? Yes, they can. If the Optane memory SSDs, or Optane memory, they're not SSDs, the Optane memory modules, if you will, came in 16 and 32 gig capacities. Alan has written stories where you can test these as storage drive. You can use them as primary storage drives. Obviously, you have a restriction of capacity. 32 gigs is quite restrictive in that regard. But if you have 2 M.2 slots, you could put them in array to array. If you have an X299 board and you want to use VROC and you want to go down that rabbit hole, you can have up to 4 or more of those drives. And then Intel did announce at CES, they were going to have Optane SSDs, the 800p, available. I think later this quarter is what they've said, in capacities of 60 and 120 gigs. So still a pretty small capacity compared to other solid-state drives, but at 120 gigs, you can definitely get your OS and applications and a game or so, depending on the size of that game on there. And again, if you want a 240 gig drive, you can do that in a RAID. Probably do VROC on it in the same capacity. So yeah, yes, Optane SSDs are going to be targeted for OS drives, and it will work in any system, right? It doesn't have to be an Intel platform, especially if you're just using a single drive. Let's see. Last question comes in from Robert, who wants to know, last episode, you said you expected more mailbag questions about your thoughts on others in the PC hardware community. So, should Steve from Gamers Nexus cut his hair? It's a very sensitive topic. At this point, it's not a style for me, and it's never gonna. Long hair is never gonna fit me, and I get it. But for him,
give me a head with hair, long beautiful hair, shining, gleaming.
I think it's kind of his signature trait now. If suddenly he showed up on the next PCB teardown video and he had a haircut like mine or a haircut like Alan's, I think it would freak too many people out. Maybe he could try putting it in a man bun or something, or maybe try different things with it. But I wouldn't. I'm gonna say not to cut his hair. I don't want to kill his style like that. Plus, I really don't think he would listen to me if I told him to do it anyway. I don't think he would. So, thank you everybody for hanging out this week. If you have questions, put them in the comments to this video. We need your questions. Post CES, pre-Mobile World Congress. Anything you want to talk about, ask it in there, or in the PCPer.com page that embeds this video. You can leave the comments there, and we will go through them and get some questions for you guys. So thanks everybody for watching. We'll see you next time.